Hello there. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the politically incorrect corner of the internet. Beard Blather 201. And what the hell do we call this one? Oh, yes. Lagging indicators, which will become clear in a little while. I'm Saul Montes-Bradley, the largest human repository of useless information from my golden cage in Florida, where we were just woken up by a tornado, of all things. It's following me across the country. And right next to me, is it there? No, it's there. There it is Thomas Wictor, the only living expert in World War I flamethrowers, and raconteur extraordinaire who hates fucking French, so why should I say that in French? A great storyteller, sir. And we're doing this on our Odyssey channel and simultaneously in 3 timelines in Twitter. Now, X, like the X Factor. My personal one, Thomas's personal one, and Quadverum's, and in YouBoob, where we don't intend to stay until the end, but who knows, sometimes I forget. There are chats everywhere, but there's only one we monitor, and if you want to have an exchange with us, and the slimmest chance that we will mention it on air, you have to click the link provided in all of these media and come to the Odyssey chat, and from there, you can chat to your heart's content. To support this and allow us to keep doing it, please either become a member of the channel in Odyssey by clicking join under the video, or contributing to the channel by clicking all things support, or by clicking on the $sign and making a contribution through the chat and buy us a cup of coffee. What the heck? And now that I have settled, and I forgot, if none of these are enough for your fancy, you can always go to quadverum.com/support us and contribute to both SQV and this channel. And having said all of that, what are you doing in Californication, Thomas?
Well, I got my new beard trimmer today.
Oh. Does that mean that next Saturday we're going to have a trim beard?
Well, the only reason my beard is as big as it is because my trimmer that I'd had for 10 years finally croaked, and overcome by apathy, I didn't do anything about it. I tried trimming it with scissors, and the first thing I did, you can see here, it's asymmetrical. So I said, you know what, forget that. I'm gonna get a beard trimmer, and it took me forever to get it. Supply chain problems.
No. Maybe it has something to do with the parts not making it to Europe through the Bab el-Mandeb Straits. By the way, now that I mentioned Bab el-Mandeb, I remember the Red Sea, and that tomorrow is going to be 3 months since this heinous attack of Hamas on the world through the people of Israel. People don't seem to know in this country that over 50 Americans were affected. 30-some were killed on October 7. The rest were kidnapped. And the death count, I fear, will go higher. So, apparently, if an American dies in Israel, nobody gives a shit. But in the meantime, and while this thing lasts, and apparently it's going to last a whole year, ich bin it, people. And if you don't like it, you can go to those Nazi places where all the cretins hang up.
Well, it's funny you should mention that before I get to Biden launched his 2024 campaign today. But it's funny, okay, the rumor is that the Ukrainians have killed the Russian chief of staff, Gerasimov, and they think that because he was in an underground bunker in Odessa, and they hit him.
Not in Odessa, in Crimea.
It was in Crimea, yeah. So it was Sevastopol.
Sevastopol.
Right. So nobody knew that the Ukrainians had bunker busters, but they do. And the Russians aren't saying anything much in the same way that our government isn't saying anything about our Secretary of Defense being hospitalized.
Yes. Apparently, the same as our Secretary of Transportation. Remember when he took the parental leave and notified no one, and for 2 months, nobody noticed that he wasn't there. And now it took a whole week for somebody to notice that the Secretary of Defense was not there. He was, as a matter of fact, in an intensive care unit.
Yeah. No, and we're
This
still
is
not
like
getting...
the Soviet Union, baby.
Yeah. And sort of along those lines, Biden's entire campaign will be January 6th, democracy is at stake, and Trump is a Nazi. And he's back to yelling. So nothing like a querulous old man yelling querulously. So
yes.
It's like, good luck. This has nothing to do with the border. This has nothing to do with the economy. This has nothing to do with food price. They've tried everything. They tried telling everyone they were too stupid to see how good the economy was. They've been blatantly lying about the border, and now we're back to Trump as a Nazi. And
yes,
it's just retarded.
And as you have said so many times, and as I have said as well, and with Millet and with Meloni, all of these are Nazis, and very unique type of Nazis that aim at reducing the size of government and eliminating government agencies and devolving power to the citizenry.
I mean, we've said this a million times. For whatever stupid reason, historians universally decided that Nazism was extreme right, and as you and I know, it's actually extreme left.
Yeah, that was, by the way, Stalin's propaganda.
I'm sure, and all you have to do is read the Nazis Party's 25 points, and it's sheer collectivism all the way down the line, and it has nothing to do with conservatism. What the historians hang their hat on is the fact that royalists and industrialists flock to Hitler. Well,
they always flock to fascists.
They always flock to fascists. I mean, it's this corporatism is another name for fascism.
Yes,
and corporatism is when the government, the union, the workers, and the corporations are all on the same side. They're all
yes. We're going to have a clear example in a little while. 2 of them actually, but they're all on the same side, and for the companies that participate in the fascist corporation, it means closing the entry to newcomers and ensuring virtual monopolies.
No, if you look at German aircraft in World War II, there was the Junkers company, there was the Messerschmitt company, and then there were various designers. Kurt Tank was a designer, and basically all their designs had to be approved by Hitler personally, and Hitler was insane. So the first operational jet fighter took to the skies in 1944. It was actually ready in probably late 1942. But Hitler insisted that this aircraft built as a fighter be used as a bomber. A single seat aircraft, 2 engines, and it could carry a couple of bombs. So they tried to work it out, and finally somebody talked him into allowing it to be used as a fighter. So it was delayed 2 years while
You,
they tried to do what.
I wonder who else tried to shoehorn a fighter into a strategic bomber. SU-34 comes to mind.
Of course, that's a fighter that they widened it, put two crew members in, and this thing is a piece of crap. It's designed as a high altitude fighter, which they use as a low level tactical bomber. So
What
they're
could
getting
go
shot
wrong?
down all the time.
Yeah. The Ukrainians are having a lot of fun with them, but not always shooting them down. I understand they just burnt one at a
Yeah,
military base near the Urals,
yeah,
like deep in the heart of Russia,
yeah.
which proves that the Ukrainian special operators can pretty much go wherever the crap they want in Russia.
The people who burnt it just filmed themselves walking onto the base, which is completely unguarded, and using a Molotov cocktail to burn this thing, and it burnt up, and that's the end of that.
Yeah.
And as we speak, the Ukrainians are launching a substantial offensive towards the town of Oleski across the Dnipro River, and the Russians aren't able to stop them. The Russians have tanks, and the Ukrainians have infantry, but they're blowing up the tanks with their anti-tank launchers, their shoulder-fired anti-tank missiles,
Yep, and
and
artillery.
artillery. So this whole notion, I mean, however long ago, Ukraine has lost the war. That was the big narrative.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I've been hearing this shit for 2 years now, right?
oh yeah, but it really came to a peak recently, because I mean, again, the Ukrainians were forced by NATO, by the American Secretary of Defense, who's now in the hospital. They were forced to carry out a NATO's doctrine offensive without NATO weaponry. That's how
And without
small
air cover.
of defense is.
Yeah, without NATO weaponry and without air cover. Those don't work without air cover. I'm sorry.
No, the NATO doctrine is at first the aircraft go in and they destroy as much as they can. And the Ukrainians don't have an air force. They have some F-16s now, probably a squadron's worth. They're keeping mum about it. And these
Mm-hmm.
are very capable F-16s that have been upgraded to the most modern standards. But when they carried out this counteroffensive, the Ukrainian chief of staff didn't want to do it, and he told them it's not going to work. And they said, "Shut up! We're paying we're giving you all this. Do what we say." So he said, "All right," and they launched they launched a NATO doctrine offensive without air cover, and it stalled. They did very well, considering they don't have aircraft, but it just shows how brainless our Secretary of Defense is. I mean,
Well. You really don't need. I think, by the way, that he is at peak intellectual capacity while in a semi coma in an ICU.
well, I mean, it's just. I saw a debate on CNN where it was two conservatives debating two leftists on the whole idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion
Oh, God.
policies that were all adopted in force after the death of George Floyd. And the women's arguments were like the stupidest. I mean, they literally made no sense, because one of the conservatives, I think he's Malaysian or something. He has a Muslim name, but he called himself an Asian. So I think he's Malaysian, and
Mm.
he said that these don't include the DEI requirements don't include Asians. And so one of the women started jabbering in Spanish, ridiculoso, ridiculoso. And it's like, oh, for Christ's sake, we know you're Hispanic. You don't have to like pretend that this is your first language. And then she said, in response to him, she said, the problem is that we're now damned if we do and damned if we don't, because if we're allowed in a seat at the table, then and it was like, you're not addressing the point he made. What about Asians?
No.
What about Asians?
Well, they're colonizers.
Well, they're honorary whites because they outperform everybody.
Anybody with merit is white. It's an interesting thing, when we finally managed to silence into some dark corner of the world the fucking imbeciles that were indeed in the Democratic Party in the 1920s promoting the idea that whites were somehow better equipped by nature. All of those assholes that resegregated the White House and all that jazz. When we finally get rid of that cancer in Western thought, out come these morons to tell us that those guys were right, you see? That if the playing field is level, whites will always win. If we are talking about meritocracy, whites will always win. But what happens with Clarence Thomas? Oh, he's an Oreo. He's white inside.
Yeah.
There is no escaping the non-logic of these imbeciles. Because,
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, because the thing is that they abandoned logic, they abandoned reason. For me, it always was the way I was brought up, the way I am, and unless something better comes along, the way I'm gonna die. Is racism is a profoundly hideous ideology born in ignorance and condemnable in every level.
Well,
the alternative to racism is non-racism.
Well, and I'm old enough to remember the days when there was racial harmony in this country. I remember TV shows that were fully integrated and characters were characters. They weren't black characters. Mission Impossible had Greg Morris, I think that was his name.
Yep. And how about Bill Cosby, who they hate, incidentally?
There was a show called Get Christy Love. I mean, it wasn't a black this, that, the first black superhero, the first black president. And you heard the most outrageous nonsense from people. Gene Simmons, who was a conservative, said he voted for Obama because he wanted to be part of electing the first black president. And it was like, why? What, okay. Obama was on this show with Zach Galifianakis, a comedian.
Yep.
It's a fake talk show called Between Two Ferns. And Galifianakis asked him, how does it feel to be the last black president? And, that's probably what's going to happen for a long time, because we got that out of our system. And
we got burned with Obama, let's face it. I never supported the son of a bitch. I always saw him as a Peronist, a little tiny weeny beanie fascist. And I always saw him as half white.
Well, of course. I mean,
funny how nobody talks about that other half.
Nobody remembers that at the beginning of his campaign, blacks didn't like him because he was half white. So he started telling...
He hadn't gone through the black experience, remember?
started telling stories about how he wouldn't be picked up by taxis, and he suddenly started speaking in a much more pronounced urban accent.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like the most grotesque pandering I've ever seen in my life, and it worked. And all the people who voted for him, like Gene Simmons, they felt so proud of themselves. They were kind.
Colin Powell.
Pardon me?
Colin Powell. The moment I decided he was an imbecile after all.
That idiot speechwriter for Reagan. What the hell?
Noonan, Peggy?
Peggy Noonan.
Yeah, she's brain dead.
Yeah. I mean, it was all the establishment Republicans voted for him, and then they he got reelected after doing what at the time was the worst modern presidency on record, eclipsed only by his protege. So it's I don't know. I never felt the need to see people. Maybe it's because my mother was Mexican, and I never thought of her as my Mexican mother. She was just my mother.
And you never thought of you as some kind of handicapped Hispanic or shit like that?
No. When I'm asked my race, I always put down white because I present as white. And apparently, what is it? The categories, there's so many people like me that the categories become a non-white Hispanic. And it's like, remember when all those idiots, it was Nick Fuentes, for example,
oh God.
They were all talking about, white nationalism and all this crap. That's a lie. There's no such ideology. It's European nationalism, because there are white Central Asians. There are white.
Have you seen Iranians lately?
There are white Iranians. White
most of them.
There's
most Iranians, most Saudis, most Yemenis, most Palestinians, all Lebanese are milky white and are all part of the European race.
Well, there's a pair of Palestinian, they're twin women who were models, and they're redheaded white girls with blue eyes.
Yep.
That famous blonde monster girl.
Oh, the one that is always attacking IDF soldiers?
Exactly. Blonde hair and blue eyes.
Yeah. So, take a look at the women that the Iranians have lashed for refusing to wear the hijab. Take a look at their pictures.
No, Nick Fuentes doesn't accept those people as real whites. He doesn't accept white Israelis as white. He doesn't accept Ashkenazi Jews as white. So the ideology of white nationalism doesn't exist. He's a bizarre Hispanic Europoidal fanboy is what he is. And
he's a kind of mestizo by the looks of him, but
I mean, his name is Fuentes. I mean, he's not a Spaniard.
Nope.
He's not Nordic. Okay, the Nordic people, the Nazis were all about their Nordic heritage. They're not Nordic.
Yeah.
Germans aren't Nordic. They're not Vikings.
No, they're not. And if you're talking about cretins like Hitler himself from Bavaria and Austria, give me a fucking break. I mean, those guys had their own ancestors fucked for centuries by Romans, and everybody that went with the Roman legions, they're almost indistinguishable from a guy from Naples.
Exactly. No, I mean, Bavarians are similar to Italians, and I don't know. It's ridiculous. Nazism is a stupid ideology for multiple reasons. It doesn't work, and of course, Nazi Germany was the most militarily defeated nation in human history. So the guy running the show was a crackpot who had all these stupid ideas that he threw around just because he could, and they went to war with no natural resources. So it was this huge roll of the dice. Will they be able to get all the oil? And it's like, well, it turns out they weren't able to. So they had to create ersatz oil. I mean,
if it wasn't for the pusillanimity of the social democrats in Europe and in the US, there would have been no World War II. Hitler would have been defeated immediately after grabbing the Sudeten.
He said that himself. He said that himself to Marshal Mannerheim. And
Yep.
The only known recording of Hitler speaking candidly. He said we weren't in any shape to take on the West. We had no tanks. They had 2 light tanks, 2 models.
They had no fuel.
They had no fuel, and see, Hitler was a combat soldier in World War I. He was a runner, so he won the Iron Cross, even though he's only a corporal, and he was very physically brave. But he was stupid. And even in World War I, he was a butthole who nobody liked. But the Germans essentially lost the war because they were blockaded. I look into flamethrowers. Flamethrowers became impossible to manufacture because the Germans had no rubber and they had no brass. And, Hitler didn't learn anything from that. We blockaded them. We kept them from getting the oil they needed.
And by the way, they were able to create synthetic rubber and synthetic fuels, but too expensive, too late.
Yeah.
Technologies that today we could use to our collective benefit if people weren't so stupidly bent on sending money to China for solar panels.
I mean, okay, all that stuff, it's all going to die out. The car manufacturers are saying no more electric vehicles. They're not selling.
Come on, the GM sold 28 last year.
Elon Musk just had to admit that his frigging Tesla doesn't get anywhere near the mileage that he was claiming.
No, and wait until you have a nice little blizzard in Maine.
Oh, yeah.
And see how far they can get.
Yeah, you travel 5 miles and then you're dead.
And the battery's dead.
Freeze to death. If the thing doesn't blow up and burn your house down.
Yeah, don't charge them inside of the garage. No. Charge them outside, baby, because it may torch your house. And those are their recommendations.
This is all part of people not knowing anything about anything. I saw a guy on Twitter when I was still on social media say that the way you can tell a Nazi or a fascist is if they ask you to define fascism. It's like, no, you're just getting out of you're swivel hipping out of having to be able to define fascism. And the overwhelming majority of people calling Trump a Nazi or a fascist don't even know what the term means.
No.
And,
and some people will even tell you, because they're this stupid, that there isn't really a definition for fascism.
Yeah.
Which is a cop-out, so fascism is anything that comes out of my ass this morning. But the definition is fairly simple, and it was given to us by the founders of the fascist movement. It is a collectivist,
centralized
organization of the state, where the property of the means of production remains in private hands, but heavily regulated by the state, because while the means of production can be owned by particulars, production itself has a social value and therefore needs to be regulated. It aims...
Go ahead.
It seeks to get to social peace through social justice. So once the state guarantees health care and retirement and a specific level of salary for each profession or trade, then people can no longer have the right to strike or in anywhere impede production so that we may attain development.
Right.
That is fascism.
Well, more, no free press.
No need for it.
An absolute dictator in charge.
Right.
No opposing political parties. So,
though they can be tolerated for a while, but ultimately, since the fascist party is the expression of the will of the people, anybody who goes against the fascist party is going against the will of the people and is therefore, funny I should say this on January 6th, an insurrectionist.
It's an insurrectionist. Also, fascism is defined by militarism and either...
It is a common trait to all fascist movements, yes.
Usually racial supremacy or ethnic supremacy. Like you said, fascism is very easily defined. And
yes,
those who claim it's right wing or that there's no one definition are deflecting because
they all came from the Socialist Party. All of them.
That's what they don't want to. That's what they don't want to admit. Hitler was a vegan. I mean,
he was a vegan. He was a fucking socialist. When they were in the Bundestag, and Goebbels proposed the nationalization of industry and had to be told by the Politburo of the National Socialist Party to cool it, man, because it's not yet time.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, also, another characteristic of fascism is a rabid hate of conservatism and a rabid hate of communism. So people think that the communists and the socialists are all buddy-buddy. No, they've gone to war multiple times because they see each other as competitors.
All leftists do. It's like the Highlander. There can be only one. For a Bolshevik, there's nothing worse than a Menshevik. For a communist, there is nothing worse than a Trotskyite. For a fascist, there is nothing worse than a Menshevik, a Bolshevik, a communist, or a Trotskyite, because they each vie for the monopoly of collectivism. They tolerate no competition in their field.
Yep. And
so they may associate to get to power, but once they get there, it is an all-out war between the factions.
Yeah.
And it always is.
This happened in Russia once the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks fought it out. Trotsky had to go into exile, but in South America, was it Argentina or Bolivia?
No, he went to Mexico. He lived in Pedregal de San Angel, and he was first there was an attempt on his life, led by Álvaro Siqueiros by order of the Mexican Communist Party. And finally, he was killed by a guy sent by Stalin, who managed to get employed in the Trotsky household as a gardener, and eventually drove a pickaxe in his head.
Yeah. So even though Trotsky was totally out of the picture, he couldn't be allowed to live. And figuratively, the Democrats are trying to do that to President Trump with this endless, nightmarish. I heard 2 more states are going to take him off the ballot. I mean, this is
this is nonsense. By the way, that's another characteristic of fascism: the intolerance of opposition. Not only are the Democrats trying to get Trump out of the Republican primary ballot. I mean, what the fuck do these people have to do with it? To be selected as a candidate is not being elected to an office.
No, we're not even allowed to do that. We're not. Trump.
And at the same time, they are ensuring in Florida, in South Carolina, in 2 more states that I don't remember now, they're ensuring that Biden is the only candidate in their primary.
Yeah.
Nobody else can run against the king.
Yeah.
Well, why not?
Think about that. Like,
are they the defenders of democracy?
well, also, this is a move of total desperation on the part of Dark Brandon. It's just the fact that he's out there yelling again. Just the usual. January 6th. I saw an MSNBC host talking about January 6th, and then he broke down into tears. It was just like, oh, you can't be serious. You can't be serious.
The bombing of the Senate in 83, no big deal. Let's pardon them. They were ours.
Yeah.
The bombing of the House in 73, oh, let's pardon them. They were ours. Blathers and the rest of this awful crowd. Suddenly, the actual physical bombing of both the House and the Senate is no big fucking deal.
Yeah.
But a crazy motherfucker with backing horns is the end of the world as we know it.
Well, it's worse than 9/11 and Pearl Harbor combined, according to Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, well, don't ask me what I think of her being in Congress compared to 9/11.
Don't ask the sailors of the Arizona. Would you rather be bombed by the Japanese, or would you rather watch 600 idiots go into the Capitol building and steal
imagine
and chant stuff?
Let me bring this from the chat. This is from Kelly. Kelly is in New York, and she's one of our early and most assiduous followers. But she says something here that we need to clarify, because a lot of people think this, and I think it's wrong. And with you here, maybe the two of us can elucidate this. She says, Obama was not culturally American, black or white, more Indonesian and Polynesian than a blip in Chicago. Let me say why I disagree with Kelly. I actually think that Obama was quintessentially American.
Yeah, I was going to use exactly the same phrase.
Yes, he's no different than Claudine Gay. He's no different than Ibram Kendi. He's no different than any of these pseudo-intellectual morons produced in American universities. And I don't have to tell you the quality of the intellectual morons that come out of Occidental.
Well, Obama Obama had a poem published in the newspaper in Occidental, and it's multiple students, experts on writing, not handwriting, but just turns of phrase, determined that this was from his stepfather. His stepfather wrote it, because the only known poem by Obama is this drivel about apes in a cave eating figs, and it's just like, please, this is ridiculous.
He was probably doing mushrooms when he wrote that,
right? And his academic records are sealed. At Columbia, professors admitted, I never gave him tests because I felt he was more a peer than a student.
Of course, and he was helping with the fundraising for the PLO, remember?
Yeah. No, I mean, the guy was swept all the way through, and he's an actor. Yep.
And by the way, the Polynesian, there is no contact. Part of this fable of Obama the foreigner comes from a movie, 2016, was it? Oh, well, never mind. A docudrama about Obama and how he was, educated in the anti-imperialist, anti-colonial ideas of his father, and he was imbued by the Kenyan philosophy. Bullshit. His father came over as a student, fucked his mother, and left. And there was no further contact. Obama did not learn anything from his father or his father's family. When his mother, who was a flower girl, very active in the Summer of Love, I understand, who apparently liked, took the preferential option for the brown to extremes. So she married a guy from Indonesia. They went to Indonesia with little Obama, who was then educated in a Jesuit school for Europeans. There's nothing of Indonesia in the guy,
Well,
and
also,
everything of the Jesuit school.
also, Obama's father, his birth father, was a catastrophic alcoholic who lost both legs in two different car accidents. Now,
Yeah,
that takes real motivation to be
so much for the revolutionary, right?
so you're such a dedicated drunk driver that you managed to lose one leg in one car accident. Um, People almost never lose a leg in a car accident, and then you lose the second leg in a second car accident. So, his father wasn't teaching him anything. His father looked like, your typical. He looked like Mobutu. He wore the sunglasses, and
Yep,
he had an austere look about him, but he was another faker, just like Obama. And
just another figure. But Obama didn't have any contact with him.
I think he met him once.
Obama's Obama's father was Soetoro for all intents and purposes, and that ended in his teenage years. So his real mom and dad were his lily-white grandparents who sent him to an exclusive high school in Honolulu.
Yeah. No, I mean, the guy's fake. The guy's fake on every possible level. And just the fact that he couldn't even speak without a teleprompter. He's an actor.
Yeah,
Robert De Niro is notorious for being unable to give interviews. He has nothing to say when it comes to being Robert De Niro. You
right.
have to give him a script, and he'll memorize it. And then, if you Sean Penn is the same way. I've seen Sean Penn interviews, and they're painful. There's nobody home, and Obama was the same way. I mean, I've never really liked De Niro. I think De Niro has been doing De Niro for 50 years. Um, and the only movie I liked Sean Penn in was Fast Times at Ridgemont High. But, and I didn't respond. I told you that when I first heard Obama speak at the 2004 Democratic National Convention, I thought, well, there's one guy we don't have to worry will ever be president. He's too much of a buffoon. And little did I know. Um, I mean,
I underestimated just the same. I think that this little Pyrenees fuck is never going to make it. Lo and behold, they
yeah.
planted him there. I guess
Well,
shit
see,
floats.
conservatives are currently in love with Bill Maher because Bill Maher is gutting woke people. But Bill Maher is fanatically, insanely opposed to Trump. His reasoning is infantile. He says that Trump won't leave the White House if he's elected. And it's like, so is he still there? Is he still in the White House? You mean he left? He walked out on his own accord? Yes, he did. So you're an idiot, Bill. And also, he said that he has no complaints about Obama. I mean, so much for Bill's towering intellect. He's
You're of course, before anybody says that you're singing the praises of Bill Clinton,
what?
this is Thomas being sarcastic, people.
No, I mean, I'm talking about Bill Maher, not Bill Clinton.
Oh, Bill Maher. No, Bill Maher it's even stupider than Bill Clinton.
Yeah, I mean, I did vote for Clinton the first time, but in my defense, I was 28 years old, I think,
Mm.
29 years old. And,
Yep.
you know, I was in the middle of a catastrophic breakup, and it was just like, I didn't like
Fuck you all.
Well, I didn't like George W. Bush because, that read my lips, no new taxes. The first time I heard him say that, I knew he was lying. You know, and it was such a blatant lie. I just figured, what can go wrong with Bill?
Well, well, me being older than you, I was able to catch on that one. I did not vote for Clinton, and I did not vote for Perot, and I wanted the Republican government to continue. But and I remember a cousin of mine. He was he did 5 tours, uh, flying in Vietnam in what we now call Era America,
Mm-hmm.
and he was telling he was furious. He was climbing walls, and I told him, "Dad, don't worry. This country can survive this fucker." I was wrong. He permanently changed this country for the worse.
Of course. I mean, of course. It's he and his good for nothing wife, who's another faker, the most
Yes,
accomplished woman in the world. Really? What has she accomplished?
she didn't
Tell
get
me,
to fuck her husband.
it's
As a lawyer, she didn't pass the bar.
yeah.
As a
No,
first lady, she tried to steal the china.
yeah.
As a wife, need I say what a failure she was?
No,
And of course, we have one of Clinton's rape victims, Juanita Broderick, who claims that after he raped her, he told her, "Don't worry, you're not going to get pregnant." And apparently that he was uh, 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 unable to bear children since he had the mumps as a child.
huh.
So what can I say? Maybe the rumors about Chelsea aren't that wrong after all.
They all see the problem with leftism, and I think the world is sees that now. The problem with leftism is that it pays lip service to an ideology that doesn't work, and it's motivated entirely by hatred. Leftism isn't a benign ideology. It's a vicious ideology, and I lived in
Cool.
the most leftist country I lived in was Norway, and those were the most unhappy, belligerent people I've ever met in my life. And um, a lot of people love Norway. They consider it, the greatest country on earth. And it's like, okay, try living there. I'm sure you've been there on vacation. Try living
Not
there.
even the Norwegians think that.
No, no. I mean, I've never had more people challenge me to fist fights than in Norway for no reason that I could determine. And I've never seen more drunk people in my life. Maybe Tokyo. Tokyo and Norway both had an astonishing number of drunk people. And, it's like, where's the greatness of this country? And the government with its ridiculous rules and regulations that suck the life out of it. The whole country's on the take. The black market in Norway is astonishing, and
Yep.
every single person wants to be paid in cash. The doctor who cleared me for my Norwegian driver's license, I was directed to him by the neighbor. He was a bent doctor because usually it would be like an 8-month waiting list. And if I paid him in cash, then, everything was hunky dory. And That's what happened. He gave me the stupidest test I've ever seen.
Are you alive? Yes, passed.
No, he made me lean back in the chair and hold my legs up, and he grabbed my ankles. He said, "Now pedal like you're on a bicycle." And then I pedaled. He said, "All right, you're fine." It's like, what? You listen to my heart. I didn't care. The driving instructor.
How did you pass? I hear that you don't have a heart.
No, it was a leaden heart is still a beating heart. So.
Oh yes.
You know,
but it sounds with a little bit of echo because it's heavy.
It's there at any rate, but there's a lot of stuff happening that's. I mean, okay, the Israeli trouncing of Hamas is leading to a lot of things that
glorious.
Leftism.
Glorious, my friend. There are about 8,000 Hamas cretins dead.
Minimum.
This is according to the IDF. Maybe conservative even.
Yeah.
But they claim 8,000 and including approximately 180 of the higher ups.
Yeah. No, they're looking for Mohammed Deif and Yahya Sinwar, and Mohammed Deif is known as 9 Lives Deif because he always manages to get out in time. But he's cornered. Yahya Sinwar is cornered. Today they found a massive Hamas's largest stash of cash and gold bars. So it was so huge that they couldn't remove it from the building, so they had to bring in like armored trucks to haul it away.
Yeah. That's your tax dollars at work, you know.
Of course. I mean,
that is all our aid to the Palestinians went to the accounts in Qatar of the Palestinian leadership and to the stashes of gold and money for these assholes and the tunnels. 40 billion in 20 years. And people complain about giving obsolete war material to Ukraine. You gotta be kidding me. Not one complaint. I haven't heard one fucking complaint from those assholes about the billions that we gave to terrorists in Gaza and the West Bank. Hello?
I'm back.
Yeah.
Saul's Kwan. Having trouble connecting. This is often caused by an unstable internet connection. If you're on Wi-Fi, try plugging it into your router or... Whoop, there he is.
There you are?
You're back.
Okay.
Yes.
So what I'm saying is all of the same assholes who speak against assistance to Ukraine, to whom we have only given obsolete war material, not one peep, not one squeak, not one complaint about the 40 fucking billion that we have given Hamas. The Democrats were unable to supply Trump with $5 billion for the wall at the border, but they authorized $40 billion to build tunnels for Hamas.
Yeah, because Palestinians were part of the protected class. They were the ultimate protected class. And only because they could be used as a club to beat Jewish people over the head. That was it.
Yeah.
Because Democrats, like all fascists, hate Jewish people. So,
they do. Oh, they do. They do actually more than most fascists.
Well, I read an article years ago about how leftists and Islamists had made common cause, and it's because they both hate the mercantile class and they believe only in the rulers and the ruled, and they can't deal with, Stalin eliminated the rich peasants, the kulaks.
Yep.
they were wiped out to a man.
That was the
Anybody,
Holodomor. That, by the way, the Holodomor, with its 7 million dead people, was doing away with the Yeomans in Ukraine, which is exactly what you're talking about.
right? And leftists and Islamists believe that any form of material wealth is a threat to their power. And so Islamists will get in bed with anyone. Hamas is a radical Sunni organization, but they happily take, they're happy patrons of Iran.
Oh yeah.
Hezbollah, they're happy patrons of Iran. I guess Hezbollah is Shia, but Hezbollah is
there are Hezbollah. Yeah, there are Hezbollah. There's more than one Hezbollah. There are some Sunni Hezbollahs as well.
Okay, so the Lebanese Hezbollah is currently firing missiles into Israel in support of the Sunni Hamas, and the Sunnis believe that Shia Islam is a heresy that's worse than apostasy, and but here they are all working together. So leftists and Islamists have no problem working together.
Bin Laden and his family had no problem finding refuge in Iran.
Yeah.
So much for that confrontation. But I did mention it in Gander, which is now surprisingly 7 years ago. Precisely this that we are talking about. The Iran's support for Salafi Islamists, but in particular the association of social democrats and national socialists with jihad, with Islamism. Yeah. And that's why I call them, for lack of a better term, Islamic National Socialism, with emphasis in National Socialism. If you read Bin Laden's fatwa against the U.S. and al-Suri's call for global jihad, what you read is a kind of modern-day communist manifesto by a bunch of camel fuckers. They're calling for they're fighting against imperialism, against colonialism. They want social justice in the Arab countries. Hello?
Yeah. Yeah.
So Democrats always ally with them. The Emirates just nabbed 87 assholes from the Muslim Brotherhood in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And they're being carted out to their Department of Justice to be dealt with in a manner far more efficient than anything our assholes do. And they say, for the millionth time, the Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist organization. In the U.S., not only is the Muslim Brotherhood not a terrorist organization, we have them inside the White House as advisors to governors, as staff to congressmen and women. This is ridiculous.
Well, this just proves how stupid our politicians are. Politicians
or devious,
for the most part, are actors, and they depend on others to hand them the script. So if somebody tells them you have to hire this imam to I mean, okay, the whole notion of Muslims as a protected class is kind of passé now. The current protected class of the moment are transsexuals, and we just had another one carry out a shooting. So nobody was killed, and then the person turned the gun on itself. But I mean, this was a catalyst for the wholesale rejection of all this that we're seeing. Was the Tennessee school
Yeah,
shooting.
by the way, I'm sorry. We're in the Adult Swim. We're talking genders. The people in YouTube have no idea how to spell that. So we're leaving YouTube right now. And for those of you watching us in YouTube, this would be a nice moment to hit that link and come over to Odyssey for the rest of this conversation. Bye bye, you boob. And there we go.